Hey everyone, it's me HawkeyeG here, and today we're going to be doing an overview video for the Mortal Empires campaign for the Hexoatl faction, playing as Lord Mazdamundi. So let's jump right in and take a look at what's going on here. So before I get too much into what the campaign looks like and how to progress through it, I want to quick cover the unique mechanics and traits that are aligned with the Lizardmen, and in particular with this faction. Really, with the Hexoatl faction, there are no unique game mechanics to this faction, right? It's more about the Lizardmen's unique thing. That would be the Geomantic web. This, as you can see by the bar, like the sidebar on the right, is essentially affects the power of commandments across your territories, right? And the key here is you have to be linked to something of equal power or greater in order for that to take effect, right? So if I go here, I don't have the building installed yet because you need to get to tier 3 first, but this is the Geomantic pylon, right? So you can build it at tier 3, it goes up to T5. You're going to want one of these in every one of your capital provinces, right? Because as you can see, right, I'm only at level 2 because of owned or a neutral settlement, right? I'm not at war with whoever owns this, I'm not at war with whoever owns this, right? So because I'm connected to those, it allows me to stay tier 2. In fact, you can see down here, like ruins or enemy settlements would only give me strength level 1 on this. And I can't enable these yet, but you can see that would affect the strength of the commandment that I have in the province. So in the long run, you want to build up every capital to have a tier 5 Geomantic like building in it, and essentially you want to lock down 2 provinces as soon as you can so that you can get both of them up to tier 5, so both of those provinces have those bonuses. It's going to make you much stronger. It kind of gives the Lizardmen a slightly more defensive playstyle, in my opinion, because what you're trying to do is, you build up the strength and the fortification of each territory that you claim. You don't really have to squat on every territory until it gets to tier 5, but you want to build them up, and it just allows for a bit of a defensive playstyle because your strength does grow even as you sit on it and like play defensively. Like as you're building up your Geomantic web, the strength of your overall like settlements and control of everything will continue to grow, and it'll make everything easier to manage. The other unique mechanic that Hexoatl has is the Blessed Spawnings units. Now, these you will typically have a mission for. I don't have one right now, but you'll get missions to just, take captives in battles or win fights or sack settlements. When you do, you can instantly recruit units from this panel here, the Blessed Spawnings panel. Essentially, they're just like a regular unit. They have the same cost as a regular unit, but you can see like their stats are just a little bit better, including their health, right? But more importantly, they have this perfect vigor, right? And honestly, you could probably attribute the difference in stats to just some of those stats are a difference in their unit rank. But essentially, it's this perfect vigor, right? They never lose vigor. You can have this unit sprinting at full speed throughout an entire battle, and it will never become tired or suffer any penalties related to that. So those are the two, big unique mechanics for the Lizardmen. So with that, I also want to discuss the victory conditions. So the victory conditions for Hexoatl really aren't too bad. It's pretty much what you'd expect. They're pretty standard, but so let's go over it, right? So you have a unique building, this Star Chamber, and as playing as Mazdamundi, you actually get a cost reduction for this for your entire faction. So that's pretty nice. You can get Star Chambers for cheap. You need a few of those. You're going to want to be building a lot of those throughout the campaign anyway, so this should be easy to complete. Destroying the following factions in battle. Now, in my playthrough, I didn't even have to destroy Clan Pestilens, but they're going to be somewhere down here in the south if they're still alive. The Drowned are right here, and you'll probably fight them quite early on. And then the Cult of Pleasure is actually up here in the ancient city of Quintex. And most likely they're going to kind of be an issue for you for a decent chunk of the campaign. So all of your enemies, all of the enemies you need to eliminate are actually pretty close to you and are relatively easy to wipe out. So that makes this campaign a little bit easier. The other big things are like this control of 14 provinces, including the following. It's basically this whole southwestern jungle territory, and all the way up to the Isthmus of Lustria here where you start, right? So that kind of gives you an idea of the shape of the campaign, right? you can see that the Dark Elf territory to the north is going to be uninhabitable for you, but there is an opponent that you have to eliminate right up in here. And then from there, you just have to take all this land to the south. Now, you also have to do this control 8 of the following settlements by direct ownership or through vassals and military allies. And these are basically the either like significant territories that exist in the world, or for the most part, they are the capital settlement of every major faction in the game, right? Bretonia, the Empire, the Vampires, the Wood Elves. Some of these are just kind of random minor ones. But so you essentially either need to take possession of them yourself or form a couple of military alliances with friendly people. So we'll see how that plays out. Really, the two big ones are just making sure you take over the entire Southlands, and that gives you kind of your short-term goal. And then the long-term goal is either making military alliances or conquering enough of these territories to close the game out. So with that being said, let's kind of jump into it and see what the path to the victory on this campaign looked like. So at the start of the campaign, you've got kind of a weird province here, right? The Isthmus of Lustria is the Fallen Gates, Hexoatl, Ziggurat of Dawn, and Skeggy. So you've got kind of this weird like U shape here, right? Port Reaver is part of this province here to the south with one little city down here in the southwest. And so you've kind of got an awkward start. Now, you also start with two real opponents, right? Skeggy, which is a Norska faction, and then whoever this is, Clan Gnaw, which is a Skaven faction. The biggest thing early on, and especially if playing as Lizardmen, the trick is don't overextend early on, right? Let the enemy do that. Now, I say that as I'm marching out here, but quite frankly, your first goal is to put pressure on the Skaven, right? You don't want to give the Skaven the time to build up the numbers that they need to overwhelm you. Instead, you want to stack up just a like decent chunk of Saurus warriors and just march out. Maybe a couple of skinks just to kind of have some padding and some less expensive units, but early on, Saurus warriors are going to be your key unit. It's super easy to produce them once you can throw shields on them. I mean, these, like, they'll fight most of the battles for you for a large part of the game, right? And so essentially you just want to, you want to make this move on the Fallen Gates kind of early on so that you can at least have this western, settlement under control, and then you can focus on dealing with the Skeggy. I know it's a little concerning seeing the Dark Elves right here. You can't really do much about this territory, but keep in mind that they're going to be at war with the Cult of Pleasure, so you have a little bit of time here. Kind of the trick that I ended up... the other thing is, as the Lizardmen, you have this Astromancy stance, which gives you 150% campaign line of sight on the following turn. So this makes it a lot easier for you to kind of monitor your enemy's movements rather than being the one to set traps of your own. It's much easier for you to detect and catch enemies in an ambush. So that's why you don't want to overextend yourself. You want to trick the enemy into overextending. Essentially what I did here is, you win this fight against Skeggy pretty early on. That's your first battle. You go back and you build up to fight against the Fallen Gates and wipe out the Skaven real quick. And then you kind of double back, and if you ambush and just be patient, Skeggy's going to go and occupy the Ziggurat of Dawn, and when they do, it's going to take a ton of numbers out of their troops, giving you a really easy fight and some nice cleanup. The next step is to start building up your strength and start pushing to the south, right? If you notice, we had the New World colonies here, and it is possible to be friends with them. And in the Vortex campaign, especially in previous versions, maybe that was more reasonable. But I really don't think that it's worth your time, because they will be friends with the Hunts Marshal's expedition pretty much without exception. And these guys are going to hate you no matter what. So you really want to focus, I think, on making friends with the High Elves. There's two main reasons for this. One, because they're pretty neutral towards you, right? They don't have really high aversion to you. They're gonna dislike you for the great power, but they don't necessarily have that inborn distaste for you. And secondly, because they're going to fight the Dark Elves. And that's what you want, right? What you want more than anything, the Dark Elves are going to be kind of a threat to you. They're never going to be friends with you, and you don't want to inhabit this territory. You want somebody else to do the fighting and either the stalling or the conquering for you of the Dark Elves to the north. obviously that person's going to be the High Elves. So work with the High Elves to establish diplomacy pacts whenever you can and advance, like non-aggression pacts, trade agreements, what have you. They're going to be your friends, and you're probably going to want them to be your primary ally throughout the entire campaign. In the meantime, you focus on pushing south. Now, here you can see that the High Elves are looking in great shape, and to be honest, something you're going to have to do occasionally is launching raids on this territory, right? This looks so good for the High Elves because I already went up here myself, fought 2 armies, destroyed this city, and took this city for myself. I had zero intention of keeping it at this time, but just being able to delay and weaken them by that much, right, over the course of this campaign. So Tiranoc, you can see, great position to capture this from them, should be able to easily isolate them. There's 1 military, so there's like an army of like, what, 3 here in the city, and you can't rely on a minor faction to fight a major faction for you. They're going to flub this eventually, and that's what happens in my campaign. But if you can just give them an opportunity like this to stall, right, to buy you the time you need to advance in a more favorable direction in order to gain the kind of power you want, right? So you can see Monument to the Moon, they've made no progress. They're stuck here at the Drowned are stuck here at their capital. We've still got this like rebel faction. Why they're up here in my territory, I don't really know. But it's time for me to attack them and push to the south, kind of start unlocking this jungle territory, seeing who's winning down here, right? Are the lizardmen prevailing and I can make some alliances? Or are like the humans and the Skaven and the vampires prevailing and I'm going to need to do some fighting, right? That's going to depend from campaign to campaign. That's not something you can always predict. It's pretty likely that the lizardmen are going to survive, but every campaign is a little different, right? So your next objective is to push south and take some territory. You want to occasionally soften up the Dark Elves to the north, and then you want to push south and take as much territory as you can before the Dark Elves need to be beaten up again. So once you've pushed south and you've gotten the lay of the land, I definitely think that right around this time, it's also a good time for you to kind of like this is the time to make your move and wipe out the Dark Elves if they haven't been wiped out already. Again, it's hard to be certain of what will happen. In this campaign, Nagaryth got wiped out, so we had some High Elves here that were helping. I mean, you can see Tiranoc lost all their territory, and at this point has been confederated. In fact, they lost some territory on the island. But so this is the point where, I have 1, 2, 3 full provinces to myself, a decent number of allies here with trade agreements, and I'm going to start trying to, you can see I even have a trade agreement with Uvares here. So I've got a decent amount of income and support and supplies. I've got a few provinces really well locked down. So I think that it's an okay time for me to take this, wipe out the Cult of Pleasure, and just eliminate this as an issue in the future, right? This is not going to be a great province to hold. It's not going to be a great money-making province, but I can eliminate this issue once and for all, and then just double down entirely on my focus to the south. Now, like I said, when you get here, it depends on who's still alive. And you can see that in this playthrough, the Lizardmen did exceptionally well. This really wasn't that difficult for me to wrap up, and there's not too much to talk about here, but it just kind of depends. If you're fighting the Skaven, just know that they're going to have lots of artillery. The Vampire Coast could be strong, and with them, again, it's just kind of like playing smart, kind of hitting them with a variety of units. You just got to put pressure on them because they have a good amount of missile and some artillery troops. But really, by this point in time, you should be able to kind of craft an army of whatever your favorite type of Lizardman army is and push against them pretty easily without too much pushback. Here I was able to confederate Zhlan Huapek, the Cult of Sotek, right? I was able to confederate them and get some more territory in here pretty easily, and I end up making alliances with the Sentinels of Zhati and Itza. Now, one of the things you kind of have to consider early on, is do I want to fight everybody? Do I want to make agreements with everybody, right? I definitely could have fought the Sentinels of Zhati and just taken all this territory from them. I don't think you would really want to fight Itza. You certainly can, but you'd be way better off confederating them to get a hold of their legendary lord. That being said, confederation isn't something that really comes super naturally to the Lizardmen, right? They'll be friends with you, sure, but really the problem is that they need to kind of be weakened. And when they've got control of this, confederating them isn't an easy task. There's the question of whether or not you create a defensive and then military alliance with them, or if you kind of leave it to sit. And ultimately, in this campaign, I made military alliances with them because I needed to in order to gain, like, quote-unquote control over all this territory, either through direct ownership or military allies, right? Now, at the very end of the campaign, I was still able to confederate the Sentinels of Jati despite being military allies, despite them still pretty much being at their full power. The thing is, as you grow stronger, you'll be able to eclipse them in power. You'll probably still have to buy them out you have to pay them in order to confederate with you. But just know that a military alliance into confederation is possible. That being said, a lot of people will advise against it because while your relations with them go up, their safety also goes up, which means the chance of confederation goes down. Again, on the other hand, if you're in a military alliance with them, you can make them declare war on people they shouldn't be fighting and try to force them to attack somebody, lose an army, and then potentially be able to confederate. But that's confederations. That's a whole thing. It's a kind of inconsistent business, particularly with the lizardmen. Just something that you're going to have to consider what your ideal route is here. Are you going to be friends with these people? Are you going to military ally or confederate? Or are you just going to grind them all to dust and take it all for yourself without having to play diplomacy? Just something that you're going to want to consider. Once you've solidified your grasp on this territory in the southwest, the best and probably the most obvious step is to move to the east, right? There's desert territory over here, which is very suitable climate for you. There's not really necessarily natural enemies of yours, but if you go up to the north here, there's probably going to be Skaven and potentially a Vampire Coast faction up here. And so this is really where you're probably this is like the next fight is this zone, right? But before you take that fight, you should take this fight, right? You should gather as much of the territory here as you can because this is all very suitable climate for you. What most likely you're going to end up seeing when you come here is a fair amount of minor factions all kind of banded together. When I got here, we still had Talakwa, which is actually a playable lizardmen faction. They were allied with the dwarves in here, who were allied with the Bretonnians over here. Now, the way they're usually all in some sort of agreement with one another, but I don't know if you would say this is lucky or it's just how it worked out. Talakwa had a military alliance with the dwarves. Dwarves had a military alliance with Bretonnia. Bretonnia did not have a military alliance with Talakwa. So I was able to attack Bretonnia to trigger only a fight between Bretonnia and the dwarves and not fight the lizardmen immediately. So you can see that's kind of where I've taken these territories. And then in the meantime, then it just left Talakwa isolated. And you can see the fact that I still haven't confederated either of these factions, I wasn't going to take my time to try to befriend Talakwa. And also, I was never going to be able to confederate these other people. So in this case, I went to war with them. Same kind of thing happens here with Sudenburg, right? They have this defensive alliance with Corone, the primary faction of Bretonnia. However, I can just talk to one of their enemies, and I can use that to join war against them. If I do this option, this will make it so that Bretonnia, like the defensive alliance with Bretonnia, will not be triggered. So just kind of a cute little workaround. Basically, you're going to come to this territory. There's going to be a lot of minor factions, probably all allied. You want to try to pick them off one by one just to make your life easier. If that's not possible, just blast them. You'll probably be strong enough to do that anyway. And a bunch of minor groups will not be able to coordinate their attacks effectively enough against you to win anyway. The other reason that you want to come here is to meet up with the last defenders. Now again, this is going to be another tough group to confederate, and especially if they're doing well, which he's at strength rank 6. He has no reason to really confederate with me. But regardless of that, it's still another friendship and alliance that you can use to kind of build towards your future and your success. So those are the reasons you come here, right? It's an easy fight with good territory to take. It's another allied faction, a playable faction of the Lizardmen that you're going to probably want to be friends with one way or the other. And then this is also a great staging grounds for you to hold this territory, perhaps build up new additional forces here, and then go north and fight. Now, you're also going to probably encounter Khemri here of the Tomb Kings. And at this point in the campaign, it's really up to you if you want to be friends with them or not. The Tomb Kings are like essentially a neutral faction no matter who you're playing as, so they make for a great like ally and long-term trade partner. But that being said, if they're weak and you're strong, you might just prefer to wipe them out, take their capital for yourself, and just like have that control and that kind of income, right? Their capital of Khemri is going to be one of the places that you are going to want for the victory conditions here. And so being able to take that, like you can just take it for yourself instead of making a military alliance with somebody who might be irrelevant in your game. A lot of the times the Tomb Kings don't do great. I mean, it says he's strength rank 10, but he has 4 settlements, right? So I'd still consider that pretty irrelevant, right? You could easily wipe him out, but that's a call you're going to have to make. The one other thing to make note of is coming over here is probably going to introduce you to the Greenskins. Now, they're actually kind of losing the fight at this point, and I want to say that that's because by now, yeah, the Dark Elves have lost their territory completely in the northwest, but having Confederated Malice Darkblade, they still have territory in the southeast, and Grimgor is not winning the fight against the Dark Elves like head faction and all of the legendary lords that get confederated into it, right? But before then, I mean, you can see this man has 40 settlements. He's big. He's a threat. The Greenskins are generally a threat. So just know that you're probably going to get introduced to them here at this point as well, and you shouldn't expect them to be your friends. The last stages of this campaign then are to kind of wrap up your business here in the south and then consider pushing north. Now, if you're only going for the short campaign victory, you've pretty much already won, right? Being military, like all you have to do is grab a couple military alliances with people that really like you. And again, it depends on how it goes, right? But you can see here, the High Elves have done an excellent job of conquering the north, which is how we get the settlement of Nagaron. I own Hexoatl, I'm military allies with Itza, I made military allies with Khemri so that I didn't have to grind them into the dust and take some of these terrible territories in the Badlands just to hold them. Again, the Gaian Vale and Lothern, High Elves. The Awakening, well, I took that for myself. Galleon's Graveyard, also took that for myself. So I was able to win this campaign just by making a couple of military alliances at the end. It gives me the victory. If you're going for the long campaign victory, this is where you're going to have to start to push north, right? You're going to want to take Sartosa here. You're going to want to take Miragliano is like right in here. Yeah, I can't see it, but it's right in here. Skavenblight is right in here. That's actually 3 big ones that are really easy for you to take, and that would bring me from 8 to 14. If I go look, yeah, short campaign is 8. This is 17, right? So that would bring me from 8 to 11. Sorry, I was mixing up numbers. That gets you to 11. You're still going to have to go north. You're probably going to want to wipe out Bretonnia. You're going to want to wipe out the Empire. I don't know if you really want to wipe out the Greenskins, but there's a good possibility you'll have to fight them. At some point, you might want to... I mean, if you can, you absolutely want to confederate the last defenders. If possible, maybe you want to military ally with them. Again, it's kind of one of those, you have to make the decision for yourself. I mean, you can see I finally was able to confederate the Sentinels of Jati over here, but still unable to confederate Hexoatl at this time. But basically, you push north and you start taking these territories, right? I don't know if the Wood Elves are going to like you or hate you. You can try to be friends with them, but you might just want to wipe them out quick to get that settlement. And while it looks like Bretonnia and the Empire really like me right now, that 50 affinity is artificial. That's a bonus we get for being part of the Shield of Civilization. This only exists because the Warriors of Chaos are in the game right now. If you go back to the last little footage, you'll see that this face was red because they really, really don't like me. I've been fighting their friends and just they're already prejudiced against me. And basically my next move in this campaign is to like take the Bretonian territory here and just kind of move north and fight everybody on this western coast, make landfall, probably push towards the Empire, maybe push northeast here and try to like push back the Greenskins a little bit. But they're not like doing as crazily good as they were once before. So again, it's kind of up to you. Do you want to do like a military alliance with the Tomb Kings and try to support them fighting the Greenskins? Should my support be more focused on like helping the lizardmen here conquer the greenskins and fight them? Or do I just try to take this territory for myself? I mean, it's not great territory, and I'd recommend, like, you're better off kind of taking the Empire and Bretonnia, but that's more into the long campaign. Again, at this point, like, you can have completed the short campaign. All you need to do is suck it up and make a couple military alliances, and boom, you get the check mark for it, right? Again, if that's not what you're looking for, then your next move is to push north. It's to start take territory on this coast and really establish yourself, and then push north to take Corone, most likely. And then your choice is either push into the Empire or push east into the Badlands. Kind of depends on how things go with the Last Defenders and whether they even bother to fight the Greenskins, or if you can just outright confederate them. So with that being said, that's everything that I want to cover for this overview. That kind of shows you what this campaign looks like from start to finish. We covered some of the unique mechanics and traits, and we talked about just the steps that you take along the way. Honestly, this campaign's pretty straightforward. Really, it's just about balancing your fight on the northern and southern front until you can kind of solidify things in your first province and eventually kind of set up a choke point here. And once you have this south established, you finish them off in the north. But besides this back and forth balance in the early game, it's pretty much just you go south and then you go east, and then once you're here, you go north again. So it's a fairly straightforward campaign in my opinion. Thanks for watching this video. I hope that this really helps you kind of get an idea of how to progress the Hexoatl campaign, what the unique mechanics are, what your goals are, what I think are some of the best options that you can have going forward. I don't think that there's a lot of variety in terms of what choices you can make, other than do I fight or ally the lizardmen here? And then once you get to the big picture here, who do I fight and which direction do I go in? But again, that's kind of leading into the long campaign victory if you're playing for that. That being said, like I said, thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next video. I also am going to upload my full streamed campaign playthrough of this faction and this playthrough. So I hope if you're looking for more details and you kind of want to see this process more in detail, you can always watch that video. You can also check me out on my stream at twitch.tv/itsme HawkeyeG. And we'll hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.